Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, the key to PMP exam success. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, the best place to go where real PMPs tell you what to expect. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. In this episode, we have another interview for you in which a successful PMP exam taker opens up to you and talks about what it was like for him. His name is Kevin Riley. He is a student of our Prepcast who passed his PMP exam and offered to talk about it here on the program. As you know, the rules of the PMP exam are such that we are not allowed to discuss specific questions from the exam, but we can discuss his overall experience, general thoughts on the process, and his recommendations to you. And since Kevin has changed his career and is now a PMP exam trainer himself who teaches others as they are preparing for the exam, you can look forward to a great discussion and some excellent advice. Hello, Kevin, and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast.
Hi, Cornelius. Thanks for having me today.
Well, first of all, congratulations. You have passed your PMP exam. Always a great milestone. So congratulations from me to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but before we start, we have to put a disclaimer into this interview because you are not just any successful PMP student. After you have passed the exam, you contacted me, and you are now working for our company, right?
Yes, I am, and very glad to be there.
Yes, and I liken this to the guy, I don't know, in the 70s or 80s, the guy who was selling the razors. You know, he
Remington.
said, yeah, exactly. I liked the product so much, I bought the company. And in your case, I liked the product so much, I'm now working for the company.
Excellent. That's great. Very good analogy.
Yes. So let me put the big question right up front here.
Okay.
If you had to do this again, if you had to study for the PMP exam again, what would you do differently?
Well, what I did was, being a good project manager, I actually created a project plan. Go figure that, for the PMP exam prep study. But what I did is, sometimes project managers do, is I was a little bit aggressive on the estimation. So about a quarter of the way through my studies, I realized that I had to redo that project plan. So what I would have done differently is come up with more realistic estimates on how long it would take to actually complete my studies based upon the amount of hours I was working, my volunteer work, and all other distractions going on in my life at that particular time.
All right. Well, then let's jump right into that.
Okay.
How long had you planned, and how long did you then actually take? So what did you have to switch over there?
I actually started in January of 2011 thinking about doing the PMP exam certification, and it took about 5 months for me to actually do it. I actually got my PMP on June 26th of 2011, and reason being, I was working full-time when I first started studying. Then I was, quote-unquote, in transition, involuntarily, I might add. So the last basic 6 weeks of my studies, I was able to do it full-time. So that's kind of how it evolved, and it really worked out very well during that time, because when the time off from work, I was able to really dive into the studies and take a live course in addition to my online study and my self-study. So that worked out very well.
All right. And how much had you originally estimated how long it would take you?
I estimated 120 hours originally,
Okay.
and it took me 320 total.
Wow, okay.
But,
so almost what, 2.75
Yes.
times as much?
But you have to realize I'm a pretty detail-oriented guy, so I don't think it would take everyone 320 hours to study, but of course everyone's an individual, so
Yeah.
you have to determine that for yourself.
Anything else you would have done differently?
Not really. Once I got that plan, the project plan set and the estimates correct, I kind of stuck to it, and it worked out very well.
Okay. Also, you studied for the exam using the PMBOK guide 4th edition,
Correct.
and the 5th edition is already sort of in the making. Do you feel that the way you studied, your approach, the discussion that we're going to have right now is going to be valid in the future for those people who hear this interview maybe in 3-4 years, and maybe they're using the 5th, 6th, or 7th edition of the PMBOK guide?
I do. I think the things that we'll talk about today are going to be valid no matter what edition of the PMBOK guide comes out. Basically, there's a limited amount of knowledge areas and knowledge in the PMBOK, although they might be rearranging and adding a few things over the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. But I think the basic plan of attack, having a project plan and sticking to that, is the best way to pass the PMP exam, regardless of the format in the future.
Very well. Why did you choose to become a PMP?
Well, I was in project management in IT for about 10 years previous to taking the exam, but I was only a project manager in name for about 2 years before that. So I was really doing project management for 10 years. And I finally said to myself, well, okay, I'm pretty good at this, and most of my projects, okay, some of my projects succeed, but it'd be nice to know the actual framework that's involved. So what I did was I joined my local PMI chapter and went to a couple of meetings, and then decided pretty quickly after going to that first meeting that the PMP certification was for me, to give me the kind of framework that I needed. Also, I did some research because I was looking at some other certifications like the ITIL, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, which is more specific to software development and product development. But I wanted something that was going to be project management oriented and was also globally recognized, and that was the PMP. And the other thing was, once I went to start my studies, my boot camp instructor indicated something very interesting to me that I did not realize, and probably most PMP aspirants don't realize, is that the PMP certification is not just a certification, it's actually an accreditation, similar to a CPA. So it's not like a one-day seminar where they hand you a certificate. It holds a lot more value and is globally recognized as the standard for project management in the entire world. So those are the kind of reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that especially the last bit people seem to miss when they're going to, these one-day classes somewhere, maybe from a smaller or mid-sized company, and at the end they get a certificate.
Right.
You are now a company XYZ certified project manager. The PMP exam is much bigger and much wider than just that.
It really is.
Yeah. The biggest hurdle from my experience with my students that everybody has to take is the application itself.
Yes, sir.
I mean, the normal stuff, name, last name, birth date, where do you live, that's usually quite simple and straightforward. But when it comes to putting in all the details, all the information, showing your experience, that's where it really gets hard.
Right.
How was that experience for you?
Well, after I gave them my name, my rank, my serial number, my firstborn child, no, just kidding. What I did is I actually treated it just like a job interview. And by doing that, what I did was I spoke to every person that I worked for or with throughout my career, and what I was using as the projects for the application, and sent them an estimate of the total hours I spent in each of those positions and asked them to verify that. So doing that, if you give someone a resume, you have to make sure that all those references may be getting called. So one thing you want to make sure is they agree with the estimate of the hours that you put down on the application, but also that you're still on good terms with them, because we know that has bitten us a few times in our lives where we had an individual we thought, would vouch for us and still liked us, and ended up they didn't. And the third thing is to make sure that you have immediate or current contact information for those people, because the chances of you getting audited are, what are they now, Cornelius? Is it still 5%?
PMI doesn't say.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
There's no official number out.
And it's interesting you say that, because I heard 5%, 10%. Really, to me, it's 50-50. It's a flip of a coin. Yeah. Either you're going to get audited or you're not. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. Talk to those people you're putting down on the application and make sure that they agree with the estimates and that all their information is current. That's really, really key.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how important this particular step is that you have just gone through here. I personally only know of one student, PMP student, who had the unfortunate event happen that one of his contact people was not contacted previously, and he disagreed with what was on the application.
Death.
This student not only failed the PMP audit, this student is now banned from ever taking any PMI certification.
Very important.
So
crucial.
He cannot become a CAPM, not a PMP, not an ACP, nothing. PMI will not allow him in the door anymore.
They take that
because
very seriously.
there was obviously lying going on his application. Whether it was lying or whether it was just malice on the part of the other person,
it doesn't
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because it's inaccurate information. That's what it comes down to. And just so you know, I'm a part-time instructor for our PMI chapter in Orange County. In our last group, we had 35 students that were taking the exam, and 7 out of the 35 got audited in our last class. So
wow, that's 20%.
It is. So you don't know. Like you said, PMI doesn't tell us. For me, it's a flip of a coin. It's a 50-50 chance.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay, so much for the application process. Now let's jump into the actual preparation, into these studies.
Okay.
How did you prepare yourself for the exam? You've already alluded a bit to it. You did some self-study. You also went to a course.
Yes. So first thing I did was I purchased your OSP International's PM Prepcast. And got all the thank you. I appreciate it because that's awesome stuff, Cornelius. It really is. That's how I started it off, and I got the Prepcast and all the assorted documentation, the PMP exam tips, the weekly newsletter, everything you have available, your tweets, Facebook, everything you have available. I took advantage of, and it really, really helped to get an idea of what was involved in the whole process.
Right. And just as we put the disclaimer at the beginning of the interview that you now work for us, you and I did not know each other at that time at all.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
You were on the PM Prepcast came recommended from another member in my PMI chapter. Okay. So, and then on top of that, the PM exam simulator, the OSP International PM exam simulator. So definitely the second part of it, very important to do those practice exams to get ready for the real exam itself. In addition to that, when I went through a 3-day PMP exam prep boot camp, which is a great addition to everything. I used Andy Crow's materials, which is the VelociTeach materials, which are, in my opinion, for a couple of reasons, are the best on the market, depending on what your intent is, whether you want to just pass the PMP exam or you want other references. We can talk a little bit about that in a minute. But what came out of the boot camp was solidifying everything from the Prepcast, but also doing 2 things called brain dumps. So a brain dump, the first 1-page brain dump, is basically doing a manual exercise where you take everything from the page 43 PMBOK guide matrix that has the process groups, the knowledge areas, and the specific processes within each of those, and before each 200-question practice exam, practicing that brain dump from memory. And also another one which came from your formula study guide, a 1-page formula brain dump that you can, as soon as you go into the exam, before you actually start the exam itself, do your brain dump. So that was really good. Obviously, another thing is read the PMBOK guide.
How many times did you read it?
I read it twice. So the first time through, I actually read it. I did not study it. I read it. And basically, I highlighted the sections that were not familiar to me. Then I went back and I studied the highlighted sections the second time around. And during that time, I also made some manual flashcards of each of the terms in the glossary that I did not understand right off the bat. So I had all those materials.
And talking about the PMBOK guide, you made a reference to a page number just a moment ago, page 43.
Yes.
That changes in every edition of the PMBOK guide. I think in the previous version it was like 73, now it's 43.
Yes.
I have no idea what it's going to be in 5, 6, and 7. We are talking about, usually it's table A1. That is the table where you see at the top the process groups, initiating to closing, and on the left-hand side you have the knowledge areas starting in the 4th edition with, let's see, what is it? It's integration, and ending with procurement, and in the 5th edition, it's going to end with, what's the new one again? Stakeholder management, I believe. That's the 13th knowledge area that they're going to add in there.
That's a good point. Using a page reference is probably not a good idea, but
because that gets old and stale over time.
Right.
Okay, yeah. You mentioned the study guide from Andy Crow, VelociTeach. Did you use any others?
I didn't. I actually looked at a couple of other ones, but that was the one that I wanted to use the most. The reason being is, in my opinion, if you want a study guide that only contains material you need to successfully pass the PMP exam, and only that, I would suggest using Andy Crow's guide, which is it's called the Pass the PMP on the First Try. Mm-hmm. So now that's just what I did. My main goal for doing PMP exam prep study was to pass the PMP exam. I didn't have any other goals. I learned a lot about project management infrastructure and project management in general, but for me, that was a secondary goal for me. Now, there are other books out there, such as Rita Mulcahy's book, Core Performance Concepts. There are quite a few different study guides, but they contain additional information of above and beyond what you need to pass the exam. So these are still good books if you want to use them afterwards in terms of reference for project management. But for me, Andy Crow I only studied the materials that I needed to pass the exam, and that worked out very well for me. And that's what the 3-day boot camp was based on, was the VelociTeach and Andy Crow's material.
Right. And of course, this is the moment where I have to say that the Prepcast follows more along the lines of Rita and Core Performance Concepts. We do include ideas, concepts, and methodologies that are maybe not especially necessary for the PMP exam, right, but they bring everything into context and they show you how these things fit together.
Absolutely.
So it's not, from my perspective, not bad to do that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because, it expands your view of the universe of project management.
I concur. I absolutely agree.
All right. So much for how you studied. We already know you studied 320 hours. Let me guess, you actually wrote down every hour you studied?
I did. I actually created a project plan and entered, I had a percentage of completion for each of them. So, yeah, it was truly a project, Cornelius. It really was.
Yeah. Nice.
And it was a successful project too, which is
obviously,
key.
Obviously. So let's go from studying to actually taking the exam. Where did you take your PMP exam? What city did you go to?
I live in Riverside County, so Redlands, California was the closest Prometric center.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the test center. What was the test center like? Where was it situated? How did you get there?
It was actually in a Sylvan Learning Center. So, it was a closed room. It was pretty sterile, almost like a lab type of thing. And when you went in there, you had a locker that you can put your stuff in. One thing that I did, I took a granola bar, a banana, and some water, put it in my locker, and I made sure that I took breaks during the center. So when you first go in, you give your license. They have you sign in. They actually make you take your pockets out, inside out, to make sure that you bring nothing in there. And they gave me 4 pieces of paper and 2 pencils and brought me to my specific area, which is basically a cubicle. And I had a set of headphones, and I went ahead and took the test.
Right, and headphones not for music, right?
Not for music.
The noise out.
That's correct. So, and then you're able to take breaks in this particular center, which I believe you are for most Prometric centers, which I believe is the exclusive centers that PMI offers the PMP exam. Is that still correct? Okay.
Yes.
And what you had to do, you had to sign out and sign in every time that you took a break. But
did you have to show your ID when you signed in again?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Every time.
Yeah. Same for me as well. You go out, and then when you come back in, you show your ID. You have to sign in again. Yeah, okay. And what type of IDs did you bring? Did you just bring your driver's license or the passport as well? How did you identify yourself?
I actually brought both just to be sure, because I didn't want to have to go through this again. But they only required the valid California driver's license. So.
Okay. So they gave you 2 pencils, pieces of paper, which you had to return after the exam.
That's correct.
Okay, cool. So they bring you in, they sit you down, and did they now start the exam for you, or were you able to start the exam yourself, or how did that go?
No, I actually started the exam myself. So they sat you down at the computer, and the first screen says basically Start Exam. When I click Start Exam, there's a 15-minute how to take a CBT, a computer-based test, okay,
Right.
which only takes about 3 minutes because it's basically 3 screens that you just have to go through in order to take the exam.
Right.
What's nice about that is where the brain dump comes in, as you know. So by the time I got to the actual exam, I was able to brain dump the matrix of knowledge areas, process groups, and processes, and also the one page, and also the one-page formula within 8 minutes. So because I had taken 9 practice exams, full 200-question practice exams. So what's nice about that, it was familiar territory for me. I had already been through the process. I already staged the process every time that I actually took a practice exam, so I knew exactly what to do when I went in there. After I was done with that, I verified it, and then I hit Start Exam of the CBT. I ended the CBT, and then I clicked on Start Exam, and then it actually started counting down from the 4 hours.
Right. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. So you did not start the CBT. It just you were writing down your brain dump, and the screen still said, start your training now.
You can do it either way. I actually started the CBT because I knew I
So
had...
the time started ticking.
Exactly. So psychologically, I knew I had that 15 minutes. I didn't want to think about anything else except for dumping that stuff in my brain,
right?
Which worked out very well.
That's actually an interesting way of doing it. I had never thought about it this way. Well, it was very similar with me. They sat me down and said, well, click start whenever you'd like.
Right.
And I'm like thinking, I don't like yet. First, I'm going to do my brain dump, then I click start. I can take as long as I want. But your approach is click the start. It takes 15 minutes, and it forces you to really dump your stuff, and you have a time limit there. Excellent. I like that approach as well. It kind of puts a little bit of pressure on you to get started and not dilly-dally.
It does, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Did you use up all 4 hours that you had?
I actually only used up 3 hours and 7 minutes, believe it or not. But the reason being is I had a specific strategy going in. I followed that strategy, and once that strategy was done, I was done. There was nothing else that I could do. So even though I...
Talk about planning.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because do you mind if I share that strategy?
No, not at all.
Okay. So the first thing I did was I went through all 200 questions. Anything that had a formula or had more than 2 sentences, I marked for review and went on to the next question. That took about an hour. So then after that, after I got to question 200, I took a 10-minute break. I ate a banana, a piece of granola, went to the restroom, had a drink of water, walked outside a little bit. Not outside, but outside the test area. Excuse me. And then I came back in. My second pass, I went back to those questions that I couldn't answer first. And then I really looked at those, including the ones that had more than 2 sentences and that had formulas. And I tried to answer those as best I could. Okay. But I gave myself a limit of about 2 minutes each. If I couldn't get past it in 2 minutes, then what I did, I used my best guesstimate at that point. If I had no idea what the right answer was, I didn't mark it. I just marked it for review. I didn't put an answer in that. Okay.
Right.
Then I went and took a 5-minute break. Then I came back and looked at those last questions that I really had a problem with and went through them and took a guess what it came down to. Then I took another 5-minute break, came back in. I went through the entire exam. First of all, I made sure that every question had an answer. Second of all, that none were marked for review. And then I did a final, that was basically my final review of it. And then I pressed end exam. So that's exactly what I planned to do going in. And that's exactly what I did when I was in the exam itself.
Wonderful. That is a great approach. I have one question for you. And that is, you said, I took a guess.
Yes.
On the ones that you really didn't know. Why didn't you just leave them unanswered?
The reason being is if you leave a question unanswered, it's figured in as wrong. Okay? There is a penalty for not answering a question. If you do not answer a question, it's considered wrong. So,
but what if you answered it incorrectly?
Well, you have a 25% chance of getting it right.
Perfect.
And then
I was just leading you on here. I knew what you were going to say, but I wanted to make this point very specifically.
Well,
here.
and
every question requires an answer. Period.
And the thing is, Cornelius, you know this also, is when you take the PMP exam, after you take a lot of simulation questions and go through your studies, normally you can narrow it down to 2 out of the 4 answers. So the way I looked at it is, when I was at that point, I had a 50% chance of getting it right and felt confident in that. So, yeah, that worked out well.
Okay. So we're still taking the exam right now, and we are not allowed to talk about the specific questions that you have
Correct.
on the exam, but I'm allowed to ask you this. Was there anything during the exam that surprised you or was unexpected?
You know what? I honestly have to say no. Because everything that I went through, especially the practice exam simulation questions, really prepared me for everything. There are a lot of different types of questions. There are a lot of scenario-based. They do try to trick you, as we both know, but they do that. PMI does that for a reason. They only want people that are serious about project management and serious about this certification to go in there and pass the exam. So one of the other strategies I used is the RTFQ and the RTFA. Read the full question, read the full answer. If you do that, then you'll be confident when you click that end exam that you've done everything that you could to successfully pass the exam. So again, in answer to your question, there really were no surprises, which was nice.
Good. So you've gone through your process. You're sitting there. You're clicking on the end exam button. Little confirmation pops up saying, "Are you sure?" Were you nervous?
No, I wasn't really nervous. I think I was more excited. Okay, I'm lying. I was very nervous. It was actually the longest 30 seconds of my life, Cornelius.
Oh, it takes 30 seconds?
Well, in my particular case, it took 30 seconds.
Whoa.
Now,
that is torture.
Well, I think it was different than when you took it, because I took it in 2011, and it's processing. But I think because they have this end of exam survey that they want you to fill out.
Right.
That's what's churning. So
yeah, they're forcing you to fill out the survey now,
yes,
right?
they are. Yeah. So that's why I think it took longer. But yeah, it was a bit nerve-wracking, to say the least.
Okay. And of course, as we know, you do not receive a actual score or a percentage, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, you only get the above, on average, or below average.
Well,
right?
I think
something like that.
It tells you.
Don't actually recall.
It tells you whether you're passed or failed first, and hopefully you see the congratulations instead of whatever the other thing is, which I don't know and I don't want to know. But it also lists your proficiency in the different process.
That's
groups.
it. It's above proficient, and below proficient.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, good. And let's see, how long then did it take for PMI to actually mail the certificate to you?
It took about a month, about 4 weeks.
It took about a month,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And just so we're clear, you're a PMP, even if you don't have it yet. The moment you see the word congratulations on the screen, that's when you can go and say, Kevin Riley, PMP.
That's when
you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for that thing to arrive.
That's when you go to Vistaprint and print out your new business cards. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
And one important thing after you actually pass the exam, do not make the mistake that I did. Do not call your PMP bootcamp instructor and tell him you passed before your wife or your husband. Tell your significant other first. Very important.
All right. Now that you have the PMP, what's next?
Well, I've actually been pretty busy over the last year or so, which you know personally. While I was studying for the exam, I basically had 3 individuals, one of which was you, that were very supportive during the entire PMP exam prep process. I had been an IT and software trainer for the previous 10 years, and I really enjoyed doing the education and the instruction part of it. So I also all of a sudden had all this knowledge in my brain about PMP exam prep. So I called these people and asked them, how do I get into this PMP exam prep instruction business? Well, lo and behold, that same day, yourself and 2 other individuals hired me to do as an independent contractor to help them with PMP exam instruction, and I've been doing it ever since and having a great time. So,
Yes, and may I say so, you did a wonderful job with our first PM Study Coach Live online class. That was an absolute success.
Thank
there,
you.
I have to say. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I mean, I attended every single session,
Yes.
and I only once had to flog you.
Yes, it was.
Just
It
kidding.
was at the very last episode too. So
Was it?
yes.
Oh, yes, I had to disagree with you once, but only slightly. That's true.
Well, conflict is good on a project,
Yep,
right, Cornelius?
absolutely. Yeah, they say there's only one type of project where you don't have conflict. That's where you are the only person working on
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Any other certifications?
Well, yes, actually, I've been pretty busy since then. I've gotten my CSM, Certified Scrum Master certification, which is an Agile Project Management certification. I've also gotten my CSPO, which is the Certified Scrum Product Owner certification, which is an Agile certification. And I'm currently working on my PMI ACP, the new PMI Agile Certified Practitioner certification. So yeah, I guess I wanted to cram all these 4 certifications in 12 months. I don't know why, but that's just the way it worked out. But it's been a great ride. It's been a very good year for education for Kevin Riley. So it's great.
Yeah, cool. Congratulations
Thank
of all
you.
those certificates. You had to reprint your business cards 4 times?
That's
so
correct.
far?
That's correct. And that's not
And the 5th time is coming up.
that's not a bad problem to have either.
Yes.
And then
All right.
so there's one
Yeah,
other
go on.
I actually like to get eventually is the PMI RMP, which is the risk management.
The risk management professional, really? Okay.
I love risk. I don't love risk, but I love teaching risk and
You love
learning
okay.
about risk. So that one's definitely on the horizon. Definitely not this year, but definitely on the horizon.
Excellent. Well, this would normally be sort of the end of our interview where I say thank you very much for being here. But you said, now, wait a minute, at the end, hand it back to me because you have some closing thoughts. What are your closing thoughts?
I do. Thanks a lot, Cornelius. I appreciate that. When I first got serious and started studying for my PMP exam, I was scared, nervous, excited, worried, overwhelmed, and a plethora of other emotions, both positive and negative. But one thing I found all around me at all times throughout my journey to becoming a PMP were helpful, friendly people. These are people that had been through the exact same thing that I was going through. So they were experiencing the same emotions as me because they were going through the same process. Most importantly, all these people were willing to share their knowledge, which is really key to my success in becoming a PMP. So I wanted to say thank you to you, Cornelius, and everyone else that has helped me throughout my journey to becoming a PMP. I'm a personal believer in paying it forward, and so what I ask everyone that listens to this interview is to also pay it forward. If you ever have a chance or find yourself in a position where an aspiring PMP is asking for help or advice, please give it to them. I know the rewards will return to you tenfold because they did for me. So thank you very much, Cornelius. I appreciate the time, and I hope this will be valid to our PMP aspirants.
Very wise words. Kevin, thank you very much for having been on the program today.
Thank you, Cornelius.